You know, there are moments in your life that replay in your mind like an old film reel, grainy and a little distorted, but the core of it, the sting, that stays sharp. For the longest time, my recurring feature was the heavy click of an office door shutting behind me, the finality of it echoing in the sudden, deafening silence. They told me I was too honest. Imagine that. In a world that supposedly champions integrity, I was handed my severance package and a patronizing smile for essentially doing my job too well. My name is Sarah Miller, and this isn't just a story about losing a job. It's about how that very honesty they tried to silence became the key that unlocked a Pandora's box of corporate deceit, leading to a shocking $10 million lawsuit. It's about how speaking your truth, even when your voice trembles, can sometimes bring giants to their knees. It all began, as these things often do, with a sense of optimism. Innovitech Solutions. The name itself sounded like progress, like the future, and for nearly 5 years, I believed it. As a senior financial manager, my world revolved around numbers, around the elegant precision of a balanced ledger. I wasn't just crunching data. I was a guardian of fiscal integrity, or so I thought. The company was a rising star in the tech world, lauded for its innovation and, ironically, its transparent corporate culture. Mr. Henderson, my direct supervisor, always had a ready smile and a great job, Sarah, at the ready. The team lunches, the glossy brochures, the motivational posters. It was all part of a carefully curated image. But images, as I've learned, can be deceiving. Like a beautiful apple rotten to the core. The first tremor, the one that ever so slightly knocked my perfectly aligned world off its axis, came during the third quarter review of my 4th year. I was neck-deep in spreadsheets, prepping for the upcoming shareholder meeting, when I stumbled upon them, a series of expense claims under miscellaneous operational overheads that were vague, uncomfortably vague, and substantial. My gut, that internal alarm system honed by years of financial scrutiny, pinged, just some bookkeeping adjustments. Sarah, Mark, the head of accounting, mumbled when I queried him. His usual jovial demeanor was replaced by a fidgety nervousness that didn't escape my notice. I'll circle back with the details. He never did. Mark started avoiding eye contact. My follow-up emails went unanswered or were met with curt, dismissive replies. That little ping in my gut grew into a persistent thrum. This wasn't a simple oversight. This felt intentional. So, I did what I was trained to do. I dug deeper. The more I excavated, the more miscellaneous anomalies I unearthed. Inflated revenue projections here, shadowy third-party vendor payments there. It was like pulling at a single loose thread, only to find the entire tapestry starting to unravel. Armed with a meticulously compiled report, each irregularity highlighted and cross-referenced, I requested a meeting with Mr. Henderson. I walked into his spacious office, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach, but also with a sense of duty. Surely, he'd want to know. Surely, he'd take action. He listened, or pretended to, leafing through my report with an air of bored indulgence. Then came the pat on the head, metaphorically speaking. Sarah, he said, a condescending chuckle in his voice. You're seeing ghosts where there are none. These are just aggressive accounting strategies. Standard practice in a competitive market. We're just making the numbers look as good as they can be. You're being a little too rigid. Rigid? I felt a cold wave wash over me. Mr. Henderson, I stated, my voice firmer than I felt. This isn't about being rigid. This is about factual representation. We're talking about potentially misleading our investors, our shareholders. This has ethical and legal implications. His smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of something hard in his eyes. Look, Sarah, I appreciate your diligence. Really, I do. But you're in the finance department, not internal affairs. Focus on your core responsibilities. Trust me on this one. It's all perfectly manageable. Don't go stirring up a hornet's nest over nothing. Manageable or managed to be concealed. I left his office feeling like I'd been gaslighted. The message was clear. Fall in line, or else. The air in the office, once buzzing with collaborative energy, now felt thick with unspoken warnings. Colleagues who once chatted freely by the coffee machine now offered curt nods. I was an outsider, a problem. But how could I ignore what I'd seen? How could I knowingly sign off on reports I believed to be fraudulent? My conscience wouldn't allow it. So, I made a decision that, in hindsight, sealed my fate at InnovTech. I compiled an even more detailed report, including Mr. Henderson's dismissive reaction, and sent it via registered email to Mr. Davies, the CEO, Singh, the head of the audit committee. I naively believed that at the very top, integrity would prevail. Oh, how wrong I was. A few days later, the summons came. Not from the CEO, but from HR. Mr. Henderson was there, of course, his face a mask of feigned regret. Beside him sat Ms. Peterson, the head of human resources, her expression as cold and starched as her blouse. "Sarah," Mr. Henderson began, his voice dripping with false sincerity, "we've reviewed your concerns and your overall approach to your role recently." Ms. Peterson picked up the thread, her voice sharp. "InnovTech values proactive employees, Sarah. However, your recent actions have been perceived as disruptive. Your insistence on pursuing these discrepancies, despite assurances from senior management, demonstrates a lack of trust and an inability to function as a team player." I stared at them, aghast. A lack of trust. I was trying to uphold the company's integrity. What I found points to serious financial misconduct. "Your interpretation, Sarah, not the company's," Ms. Peterson countered coolly, pushing a thick envelope across the polished table. "We feel your particular brand of honesty isn't conducive to the collaborative and, frankly, agile environment we cultivate here. Sometimes, Sarah, one can be too honest for their own good, and for the good of the company." Too honest? There it was. The official reason for my corporate execution. "So, you're firing me," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "You're firing me because I wouldn't look the other way. We prefer to call it a mutual separation for the betterment of all parties." Mr. Henderson chimed in, avoiding my gaze. "This package is quite generous. You'll find..." The generous package felt like blood money. As security escorted me to my desk to pack a small box of personal belongings, a pathetic collection of coffee mugs, a wilting desk plant, and 5 years of my professional life, I felt a toxic blend of rage, humiliation, and profound betrayal. Walking out of that gleaming InnovTech tower for the last time, the city lights blurring through my unshed tears, I felt utterly broken. They hadn't just taken my job. They'd tried to take my voice. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights, mounting bills, and a gnawing self-doubt that ate away at my confidence. Was I crazy? Had I overreacted? The too honest label echoed in my mind, a cruel taunt. But beneath the despair, a different emotion began to stir. Anger. A righteous anger. I knew what I saw. And the way they'd orchestrated my dismissal, the calculated coldness of it all, reeked of a cover-up. I couldn't let them get away with it. My professional reputation was in tatters, but my integrity, though battered, was still intact. Driven by this newfound resolve, I turned my living room into a makeshift investigation hub. I had, by sheer force of habit, made secure personal backups of key documents and email exchanges before my access was cut. Nothing proprietary or illegal. Just my own work product and communications that substantiated my concerns. It was a long shot, a Hail Mary, but it was all I had. As I pieced things together, connecting dots I hadn't seen before, the name David Chen surfaced in my memory. David was a quiet, meticulous guy from internal audit. I remembered a few hushed conversations where he'd expressed vague unease about certain creative accounting methods being pushed from the top. He was still inside. He might know more. Reaching out to him was risky, for both of us. I found his personal email through a mutual acquaintance and sent a carefully worded message. To my surprise, he responded. We met in a noisy, anonymous coffee shop, far from the city center. David was visibly nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. "Sarah, You have no idea what you stepped into, he whispered, his voice strained. It's worse than you think, much worse. He then laid it all out. The aggressive accounting was a smokescreen for systemic fraud. Innovatech wasn't just padding numbers. They were fabricating revenue streams through shell corporations, falsifying contracts, and embezzling funds for the personal enrichment of a select few at the top. We were talking about tens of millions of dollars, potentially defrauding investors, banks, and even impacting employee pension funds. My initial findings were just the tip of a colossal, very dirty iceberg. The reason for my swift, brutal dismissal became chillingly clear. I hadn't just stumbled upon a secret, I'd threatened to expose an empire built on lies. A cold fury settled in my heart. This wasn't just about my job anymore. This was about justice. David, I said, my voice low but firm, we have to do something. We can't let them continue this. He looked terrified, but a flicker of determination sparked in his eyes. I have more, he said. Internal memos, hidden ledgers. I've been collecting them. I just didn't know what to do, who to trust. That's when I knew we had a fighting chance. The next step was clear. We needed a lawyer, a damn good one. I researched tirelessly, looking for law firms specializing in corporate whistleblowing and financial fraud. One name kept appearing, Isabella Rodriguez. She had a reputation for being a tenacious, brilliant litigator who wasn't afraid to take on corporate Goliaths. Our first meeting with Ms. Rodriguez was intense. She listened intently, her sharp eyes scrutinizing every document, every word. When David and I finished laying out our story, the evidence spread across her mahogany conference table. She leaned back in her chair, a grim smile playing on her lips. Well, Ms. Miller, Mr. Chen, she said, her voice resonating with quiet power. It seems Innovatech hasn't just wrongfully terminated you, Ms. Miller. They've been running a criminal enterprise. This is going to be a war. They will fight dirty. They will try to discredit you, intimidate you, bury us in paperwork. Are you prepared for that? David and I exchanged a look. There was no turning back now. We are, I said, a surge of adrenaline coursing through me, ... And so, the lawsuit was filed. Innovatech versus Sarah Miller and John Doe David. Initially, the discovery process was brutal. Innovatech's high-powered legal team lived up to their reputation, employing every delaying tactic and smear campaign imaginable. They painted me as a disgruntled ex-employee seeking revenge, a fascist. They put David under immense pressure, even threatening his family indirectly. There were days I wanted to crumble, to scream, to just make it all go away. The financial strain was immense, the emotional toll even greater. But Ms. Rodriguez was a rock, a brilliant strategist who anticipated their every move. And David, despite the immense pressure, held firm, his quiet courage a constant inspiration. We had truth on our side, and slowly, painstakingly, we built an irrefutable case. Key witnesses, former employees who had also been silenced or forced out, started coming forward, emboldened by our lawsuit. The walls around Innovatech's fortress of lies were beginning to crack. The courtroom drama was everything you see in movies, and then some. Days blurred into weeks of depositions, cross-examinations, and mountains of evidence. Mr. Henderson and Mr. Davies sat at the defendant's table, their once arrogant faces now etched with worry. I took the stand, my voice shaking initially, but growing stronger as I recounted my story, presenting the facts, one damning exhibit after another. Then came the verdict. The courtroom was packed, the silence so thick you could cut it with a knife. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat an eternity. Ms. Rodriguez placed a reassuring hand on my arm. The foreman stood. On the charge of wrongful termination against Sarah Miller, we find for the plaintiff. A gasp went through the courtroom. On the charges of financial fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering against Innovatech Solutions and named executives, we find the defendants guilty on all counts. Tears streamed down my face, tears of relief, of vindication. Ms. Rodriguez was beaming. David, sitting behind us, let out a shaky breath. The judge then announced the damages. Innovatech was ordered to pay compensatory and punitive damages totaling $10 million to me. $10 million. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the truth, finally, unequivocally, winning. Several executives, including Henderson and Davies, were later indicted on criminal charges. Leaving the courthouse that day, I felt like 1,000 pounds had been lifted from my shoulders. The two honest women had not only cleared her name, but had also helped bring down a corrupt system. Innovatech stock plummeted. The company was forced into a massive restructuring, its reputation irrevocably tarnished. It was a harsh lesson for them, and a beacon of hope for others trapped in similar situations. What did I do with the money? After covering legal fees and taking care of my family, I established a foundation, the Aegis Initiative, dedicated to providing legal and financial support to whistleblowers. People like David, who risk everything to expose wrongdoing. He now works with me, helping others navigate the treacherous path he once walked. I eventually returned to the world of finance, but on my own terms, as an independent consultant specializing in ethical corporate governance. My experience, once a source of pain, became my greatest asset. My story is a testament to the fact that one voice, armed with truth and an unwavering commitment to what's right, can make a difference. It's not an easy path. There will be fear, there will be doubt, and there will be people who try to silence you, to make you believe that your integrity is a flaw. Don't let them. They fired me for being too honest. But that honesty, the truth they tried so desperately to bury, became the seed of their downfall and my redemption. And that, more than any dollar amount, is the ultimate victory.